Good morning, Dana. Good morning, James. We will be getting started here at 10 o'clock. So thanks for joining in early. If you have any questions, let me know. Use the Q&A box or feel free to chat. And we're happy you're here. Good morning, Lisa. Thanks for joining. We will be getting started here right at 10. So you still have a few minutes to get comfortable and get whatever you need. And we'll see you soon. All right. Good morning. Welcome. It is 10 o'clock, so we're going to get started. If we have any stragglers joining in, that's totally fine. I'm guessing they probably are okay with missing this intro, but we're so happy you're here for our 7th class this first Wednesday of September, and our last and final class focused on native plants. My name is Lauren, and I'm a water conservation specialist here at Big Bear Lake Department of Water, and I am enjoying hosting you all this summer for our Water Wise webinars, and it is titled Water and Fire and Plants, Oh My. Today, we are featuring our guest speaker and native plant expert, Orchid Black, and she is here to help us learn all about attracting pollinators and creating habitat for the butterflies, birds, and bees. Orchid is a garden designer and owner of Native Sanctuary, which offers native plant consulting and sustainable design services. She has also served on the state board of the California Native Plant Society and is a lecturer for the Theodore Payne Foundation and UCLA Extension. Many of you may recognize her as a familiar face here in Big Bear, as she has also been our featured native plant expert for our Xeriscape garden tours and earthly events. So today is our 7th session in the webinar series and our final class with Orchid. Last month, Orchid led a session on rain gardens and swales, and we also heard from Douglas Kent about the art of defensible space in Firewise landscaping, and from Laura Allen on how to build your own laundry to landscape gray water system. If you missed the first 2 months of our webinars, we still encourage you to join us for this one for our final September classes that are sure to inspire and engage. Webinars are held every first, second, and third Wednesday of the month. First Wednesdays are focused on native plants. Second Wednesdays are focused on Firewise landscaping, and third Wednesdays focus on the use of gray water. Each class is different and will offer something new for you to learn and hopefully incorporate in your own home here in Big Bear. Just a reminder, attend live for each class if you can, because if you do, you will have a chance to win free gifts and books if you are a DWP customer. These sessions are targeted for all Big Bear Valley residents as well as business and property owners. If you would like to sign up for our last 2 upcoming sessions, please email conservation@bbldwp.com. We also post registration links on our Facebook page, so make sure to follow us there and give us a like. Last but not least, we do want to make sure this is an interactive question, so utilize the Q&A and chat at any point. If questions are answered live, I will try to note that. And if they don't get answered during Orchid's presentation, we'll make sure to address the questions at the end. And just one last little plug, in light of the recent rain, all BBLWP customers are eligible to receive a free rain barrel, 1 per account. You can email me or call for the details. We also have rain barrel rebates available if you prefer to purchase your own. And do not forget about our native plant rebate program that's still ongoing. And fall is an excellent time to plant natives. Each account is eligible for up to 10 plants and $10 off per plant. Our shopping list and further information is available online at our website, bbldwp.com. We also have recently expanded this offering to include shopping online or outside of Big Bear, but you do need to make sure that the plant species matches the exact species on the list. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to take a call when you are out there shopping. With that, let's get to creating habitat and enhancing pollinators. I'm going to turn it over to Orchid.
Welcome, everyone. Since we don't have a huge volume of people, I want to say that we could, feel free to throw some questions in the chat, and Lauren will let me know, and I'll take questions while we go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Can everyone see my screen? Lauren, you're muted, so.
Yep, sorry, yeah, you can see it, so you're good.
Okay, yeah. And I'm gonna go to the magic. Hold on, everyone, while I do the magic pen thing, and then we'll go backwards. And okay, we won't go backwards. We'll start right here. And so California does have more plants than any other state, more rare plants than many states have plants. And the San Bernardino Mountains have more plants, more rare plants than anywhere in the US and Canada, not including Mexico. So it's a very special place to live in the San Bernardino Mountains or be able to visit. And it's a very special place in terms of plants. So here we have, okay, it's not going now. What's happening? Okay, I'm going to stop the annotating and see if that helps.
I'm here if you need me.
Yeah, there we go. It went. So a pollinator's eye view is different from ours, and I'm going to show you what some places in California look like today, but much of California looked like this until we started building on it. So huge swaths of wildflowers everywhere. This is the Tejon Pass and the Carrizo Plain. So what happened? Habitat loss. I spent some time in Sierra Madre, which is close to Altadena, which has a beautiful residential street called Poppy Fields. And a friend of mine has pictures of people in the 1910 era in their beautiful Gibson girl clothing, sitting in the poppy fields that are now houses. So that's habitat loss. Tillage. So whenever someone goes across a field with a tractor tilling the soil, a lot of pollinators that nest in the ground are lost, especially native bees. And that's kind of ironic because, you know, a lot of farmers need pollinators. So there are ways to farm without tillage, but that's not this talk. Disease. So people plant the wrong milkweed and they cause disease for the monarchs. And pesticides. I mean, duh. It seems obvious when we think about it that we would lose pollinators to pesticides, but a lot of people don't make that connection, and particularly farmers. And farmers sometimes feel trapped. They might want to do it another way, but they don't always have access to, you know, the other ways it could be done. And gardens are refuges for pollinators. Pollinators can thrive in even small patches of habitat. So even if all you ever did was get a yarrow and put it in a pot on your porch, that would be enough for some pollinators. It's kind of like, I like to think about it as driving up the 5, and if you drive up the 5, you know, there's just no place to stop and get anything to eat, and for long stretches of time. And that's what we've done to the pollinators. There's, you know, next gas, 300 miles. It's not ideal for them, but even a few plants on a balcony could make a difference for pollinators. And if you have a whole garden, you can have a whole special place. And I like to tell a story of a garden that I was doing maintenance on when I first started. I used to do some maintenance also. And I'm walking through this beautiful tree-lined street, well, driving through this beautiful tree-lined street in an area in North Hollywood, big houses, big lawns, birdsong in the distance. It's all very peaceful until I get to this native garden, and that's where all the bird song is coming from. And there's butterflies, and there's a color riot of plants. And that's where I made the personal pollinator connection, that all wildlife needs native plants. And so the great thing is urban gardens have less pesticide use. I mean, there's still a lot of pesticides that are approved for urban gardens that shouldn't be, but they have less tillage. Most people don't rototill anymore, and they certainly don't rototill their shrubs and flowers. And the mix of shrubs, perennials, and grasses is perfect for pollinators. So the fact that your garden has different layers of different kinds of plants is great for our pollinators. And then gardens need pollinators. If you have a vegetable garden, it needs native bumblebees, and it needs native other bees. So farmers across the Midwest are now planting some California native pollinating plants just because they increase their yield. So that's an amazing thing. And also because they attract beneficial insects. And I personally think they should use their own native plants, but they use ours. And gardens, native plants evolve with native insects. So that's an important thing to think about. And I want to credit a lot of these photos. Most of the butterfly photos are either from Big Bear's own Jim Otterstrom or from Mickey Long, a biologist who's a friend of mine. So I'm not that great at taking pollinator pictures, you'll see. But here is a giant swallowtail. And birds need native insects. 90% of insects only feed on native plants. So no native plants, no insects means no birds. And insect pollinators need host plants. So they need plants that the caterpillars can live on, particularly for the butterflies and moths. And pollinators need nectar plants. So here's nectar plants for a bunch of different kinds of pollinators. And that blanket flower in the corner left is not native, but people do, like native entomologist lovers often will just put those plants in pots. But they are pretty drought tolerant, being from the prairie. Echinacea is also one of those. So, and then nectar plants mostly have clustered heads. And so that's an important thought about pollinators and what plants might work for them. And then pollinators need mass plantings. And this will come up when we talk about milkweed in a minute, but keep it in mind. And then pollinators need continuous bloom. Gordon Franke, the bee guy from Berkeley, they have non-native Mediterranean plants in their bee garden. And I feel like that's a failure of his imagination, because you can absolutely have continuous bloom with California native plants. And our pollinators would not have survived without them. So hummingbirds, 80% of hummingbirds' diet is insects. So if you're providing lots and lots of syrup, but you're not providing a way for insects to live, you're not actually helping the hummingbirds that much. I have a friend in Sierra Madre. He's under a continuous cover of oaks. In fact, you cannot see his house from Google Earth. He doesn't, once in a while he feeds hummingbirds with syrup. He doesn't have any native plants nectar plants for the hummingbirds. I'm working on that. But he still has hummingbirds because they come for the insects that come for the oaks. So birds need native insects. 90%, 96% of terrestrial birds rear young on insects. And in fact, insects, young birds can't eat hard-shelled insects, so it has to be caterpillars. And we'll see, what that is. So this is a crazy number. More than 5,000 caterpillars per clutch of hatchlings is an amazing thing. And I saw I've seen Doug Tallamy talk, and he shows the saddest picture in the world of a failed chickadee nest, where the adults, not knowing what else to do, had brought the hatchlings sunflower seeds, which they cannot eat. So that's when you put out seed for the birds, and this is me putting out seed for the birds, you're helping the adults, but the young must have caterpillars. They cannot live without them. So, so it's really not just, are we going to have pollinators? It's, are we going to have wildlife at all? Are we going to have birds coming to our feeders if we don't have native plants? And the answer is no. And so Big Bear is lucky in this regard, that most of our woody plants, or most of our biomass is large trees. And so even if we plant it up with introduced shrubs, it still wouldn't affect that number, the 30% of introduced woody plants number, because we have so many, pines and firs and cedars and so on. But nonetheless, we're trying to do better. And so planting native is how we can help the insects and the birds. And then birds need native insects, and in this lecture that I saw Tallamy give, he said the two most important kinds of plants for caterpillars in California are oaks and cherries. And we see our native black oak on the left as a seedling, and on the right, Prunus virginiana. And the proof is, okay, so the prior seedling didn't look like this, but you can see that this oak seedling is all eaten up. And on the right, you see that the cherry seedling is all eaten up too. And to me, that means that my chickadees have something to eat. And so your whole garden doesn't look like this, but if some of your garden doesn't look like this, if you don't have bite marks on your plants somewhere, you're not even in the game as far as habitat. So instead of running around going, oh, my leaves have to be perfect, and and we know people, not us, but maybe people we know might run for the insecticide to fix that. Well, that's not what we want to do. We want to allow insects to eat our plants. So our local oak is the black oak, and we also have a couple other oaks, the canyon live and the interior live oak, but the common one is our black oak. And then we have native cherries, Prunus virginiana, and which is once in a while for sale, not too often. Prunus emarginata I've never seen for sale, but I really wish we would somehow be able to come up with a program where we get Big Bear seed and mountain seed and propagate it. I mean, here it's a beautiful, beautiful shrub, and I've seen it in nature and it never looked bad. Things we need to bring into cultivation. Then butterflies. So we know that monarchs are an issue, and in California, that's mostly habitat loss, right? In the Midwest, it's plowing from fence row to fence row, which we do not have to do to feed ourselves, but people do it anyway. And of course, logging in Mexico. So, but those are things we can't control that much, except for you can promote, eating regenerative from regenerative agriculture. And people can ask me about that later. But so everybody knows, oh my God, I need some milkweed right now. And a lot of people have done the wrong thing and gotten that orange or yellow milkweed. And those milkweeds come from the Midwest, or they come from South America, and they can bring a parasite to the monarchs. And if you've done that and you still have them maybe down the hill, you can at least cut them back October to March, because our native milkweeds go dormant. And so how do you know if you have a native milkweed? It's probably cream or pink. In the desert, it could be pale yellow. And so here is our, our narrow-leaf milkweed. This one comes close to Big Bear. It doesn't really grow in Big Bear, but if you give it a little more water than some native plants, that's less water than your non-native plant. But it grows in moister clay locations, so it does need some water. And then our other, so it's a beautiful, beautiful plant when it's blooming, and it does bring all kind of interesting insects. And so this is what it looks like when you get some monarch caterpillars on your milkweed. And I didn't credit this, but one of my clients, Jennifer Doria, is this, took a couple of these pictures. And so what people do is they think, I'll try some milkweed, and they get one. And remember in the prior slide when I said we need mass plantings? Well, so people get one milkweed, they get it at the plant sale, they keep it alive, they don't throw it away when it goes dormant, and they put it in the ground anyway. It's kind of tricky because the plant sale time and the dormancy time are pretty close together. So a few people do foolishly throw away their milkweed because they don't know it's going dormant. But anyway, so the people that managed to keep their milkweed alive and didn't throw it away, and it grew in the spring, and also you can seed it in the spring. But they got one milkweed. They did not plan for a planting of milkweed. And you can't see, but in this picture, there's 3 caterpillars, and they denuded this milkweed plant nearly overnight. Fortunately, it was not the only one, but this person got religion and planted a whole lot more the next year. And but people email me in panic. They're like, I have caterpillars and I don't have enough milkweed. And summer isn't a great time to try and buy more milkweed. Tree of Life is trying to have it year round, but still, you're not going to have a mature plant. If you bought one milkweed and put it in the ground, then you would have to buy a lot of immature plants for your monarchs, caterpillars that you lured to your yard, and now they could starve to death. Okay, that sounds terrible, but this is what people do. Buy at least 3. And here are some of the other ones. And here is our super local Wooly-pod milkweed. And this is very available. You can get it at Tree of Life, I think, any day of the year. Right now, they're making sure that everyone can get it. It's a little more drought tolerant, which makes it great. But it doesn't matter. You can even get the Northern California species, and that would be fine. The Northern California species is speciosa. So any California milkweed is okay. And some of them grow fine down here. I think actually all of them grow fine down here. So you're not limited to, I find some of the Armstrong has some of the Northern California milkweeds. And I think, well, at least it's better than having the milkweed that hosts the parasite. So the message is getting out, it's kind of slow. And at the end of this talk, you'll know more than 90% of Californians who want to do the right thing, but just don't know. So this one has larger fuzzy leaves, but it still does go dormant. It doesn't go necessarily all the way away, the way that that the narrow leaf does. But it does go dormant to a degree. And then everyone is all, butterflies, and we'll see some pictures of butterfly plants in a minute. But I also want to talk about moths. So when we light up our night, just like this picture, we reduce night pollination. And I do want to tell a story of driving in the mountains with my friend one day, and he just loves to go up dirt roads. So we went up a dirt road and we ended up at a locked gate, and he didn't have a key for that particular Forest Service gate, and he didn't have his bolt cutters, not that we would do that. So we had to drive back up this kind of scary road in the dark. And as we went, clouds and clouds of pollinators came off the buckwheat and the monkey flowers. And I had an epiphany. I was like, oh, night pollination. And that's why the monkey flowers in the mountains are a lighter color than the monkey flowers at the bottom of the hill, which are kind of very orange, and ours are kind of pale yellow. And I could see the moths coming up off them. And even some common wildflowers are a paler color, like the Gilia capitata, the blue-headed Gilia. So moth pollination is super important in the mountains. And then there's like 93 likely species on Jeffrey pine and 49 likely species on white fir of moths that live on them. And I tried to find the ones that were in common, and I found one that was in common. So that's, close to like 139 species, maybe. A huge amount of species of moths. So birds are eating those moth caterpillars. So that's an important thought. And so what can we do about that? Let's just use bug lights outdoors, and turn off your outdoor lights when you're not using them. Bug lights work perfectly. And this is a picture of my personal, bug light replacement. So not the most beautiful picture, but I love this statement, most night flying insects are less sensitive and less attracted to this yellow color. And so what color should your night lighting be? It should be campfire color. And so a couple of moth species, and the yucca, by the way, has its own moth. This is from the demonstration garden, so it does grow in Big Bear. And it has its own moth. It only pollinates yucca and it only eats yucca. So I'm not going to go into that, but it's a fun story. So, daisy-like plants. So the Aster family. So I'm just going to go through plants in categories, and I'm not going to go in depth over every plant, but I just want you to see the kinds of plants that can be nectar for butterflies and moths. And so daisy-like plants, in the center here, we have all the flowers are actually there in the center disc, and these petals are often just false flowers. They're just there to direct the pollinators right to the center of the flower. And each of these black spots that has a little stamens or styles coming out of them are actually, each of them is a flower. So that's a whole flower cluster right there in what we would call otherwise a flower. And you see on this one, every yellow dot is a flower, and in the center of this head, and these flowers are going to open as we get to the center of the flower. They're going to open over time. And so again, all the flowers are here in the center, and these quote petals are just elongated flowers. And again, another mountain native. And here we see butterflies on these kinds of flowers. And I have a lot of pictures of butterflies on that Aster family flowers. Those are the flowers that look like daisies. And even dandelions. And by the way, there is a Big Bear dandelion. So you should probably not host non-native dandelions at your house. If you need help with that, ask someone like maybe Scott Eliason or one of the other botanists that are close to help you identify them. But dandelions are in the Aster family. And then so the easiest one, one of the easiest native plants is yarrow. And so they do, if you look really close, they do have that same clustered flower head. So a butterfly can stand on this head and access the nectar from many, it's not just a flower, that's this flower head with dozens, if not hundreds of flowers per plant. And then one of our beautiful fall bloomers blooming right now, the California Aster, or the sand aster. I took this picture by the side of the road, and this one too. And this is a cultivated variety. It's kind of from the beach, so I probably wouldn't plant it, but you should know that it exists. And there's the more cultivated flower. It doesn't really look the same. And then our native thistle can be found in seed, and it grew great in my vegetable garden. So it doesn't need it's okay with fertility, whereas lots of our native plants are not. It is also in the daisy family. So it looks like an artichoke, and you probably could eat it. I haven't tried. But each one of these tubes is a flower. So also hummingbirds come to this plant very regularly. It isn't just butterflies, so it's a great all-purpose pollinator plant. And here's another photo from Jim Otterstrom of Western swallowtail on the cobweb thistle, and it will also grow in a pot. And then our golden yarrow here on our plant list, and again, those clustered flower heads, are dozens to hundreds of flowers per clustered head. So super important for butterflies. And then we have rabbit brush. And in this picture, I was trying to get the habit, but we could, if we wanted to sit here and try and count, we could probably count 10 bees right there. And up close, there's also a skipper and a bee. So every time I take a picture of this plant, there's a lot of stuff on it. And if it's present, pollinators are not on other plants. This is the plant that they're on. So not as easy to find as other native plants, but really worth it. And I really wish we had the local mountain variety, honestly. And then this is an annual, but it's a great daisy-like plant. The flowers vary from like 1 inch to like 3 inches across, so it's very variable. Annual means you plant it from seed every year, but it will throw seed. And this is a plant that will also attract the goldfinches. So if you're spending too much money on Niger thistle, and some of us do, this is a plant that could help with that. And also all the daisy-like plants have seed that goldfinches could eat. And of course, goldenrod, again, you wouldn't know that it was in the Aster family or the daisy-like family, but it is. And here are a few other photos of plants in the daisy family or in the Aster family that butterflies are on. So just proof. And then the buckwheats are another class of plants that really matter to pollinators. And I looked through the Southern California Book of Butterflies the first time I made this presentation long ago, and I found more references to host plants. So the most butterflies in Southern California use this plant, which is the straight California buckwheat. And so here's another proof picture from Mickey Long. And here's the California buckwheat. These are just opening up, but it can be covered with beautiful white flowers, and it comes into Big Bear. I CalFlora this to make sure. CalFlora is how you can tell where a plant is, and that's calflora.org. And here is Pineland Buckwheat, and it's an annual. And I just put it in here to just say, do not clear this plant off your land if you have it. And it had a skipper butterfly, which I tried to get a better picture of the butterfly. It's right there on it when I was taking the picture. And it's kind of an airy plant, so the camera doesn't know where to focus. So it's just barely in focus in some places. But I was at a science-based organization and they were landscaping there. Okay, a science-based organization on the mountain, and they were carefully putting in a buddleia. And right next, and they were mulching heavily, and they had some other, pollinator plants. So buddleias are not native. You could have one, but it's not going to solve the problem of also the bird. And right across the street, or right across their little alley, was this plant and the California aster that we just saw. And I wondered to myself if they had cleared these native, butterfly attracting plants so they could put in a buddleia. And I bit my tongue because, apparently I don't have, if I turn around 3 times, a keep does not appear behind me where I could just swoop down and say, stop, you're doing the wrong thing. And of course they had already done it. So there's nothing to do. But one of our easy plants, here's from the demonstration garden, the Sulfur Buckwheat. It's a high elevation buckwheat. It does great for us. It's pretty available and it can look stunning. It likes lots of sun, but it will grow in pretty shady conditions, surprisingly. Won't look like this. And it has those beautiful flowers. And sometimes these can be super even darker rust. And then we, of course, some of you know about the Kennedy's buckwheat, and this is the Wright's buckwheat, which is very closely related. And this is beautiful. And this, it's just kind of a carpet of a low growing plant plus these little pom-poms with usually a butterfly attached. And then, of course, there are approximately 1,600 native bee species in California, and most people don't know that. And here are some native bees taken by my friend Annette Fanto. And here on your left is some bee houses. Do not buy the cheap bee hotel. You probably will kill the bees by doing it. If you need information about that, I can send it to you. But here is another daisy-like plant. It's an annual, the tidy tips. And here are 4 species of bees taken by my friend Terry Keller, who said I could use his slide. And he actually has an entire presentation of about 10 slides of every kind of wildlife, even squirrels eating this plant. So bees like blue and yellow and orange and less so red. Bees like there to be a bee-shaped hole in the flower, and some plants like the lupins actually turn redder. If they're blue, they turn more purple, and the lotuses, and if they're yellow, they turn more red. And that tells the bees that they don't want that they're done being pollinated. So the pollinated ones turn red. So blue and yellow are kind of bee colors. Yellow is an all-purpose pollinator color, but blue is for bees. So we have our blue-eyed grass and our monkey flowers, and this is the color of the montane monkey flower. And we have, the western wallflower, one of our first plants to come up, and of course it has that head that says hello pollinators. And then our local Apuntia species, the prickly pear, is always, you can almost always find a bee napping on that one. And a lot of them for the mountain are smaller, so it's not like you're going to run into it, even though they are thorny. So then our Showy Penstemon is one of our favorite ones. And I think this picture might be from the demonstration garden, but you can see right in the center, that bee-shaped hole. That hole is inviting bees to come in. And oh, so this is the wrong picture, and it should have been the apricot mallow and not the Indian mallow, but the apricot mallow does grow in Sugarloaf, so it is Big Bear local. It's easy to get. It's a slightly brighter orange, and sometimes even you can sometimes find it in a kind of pinky colors, but they're all for bees. Then we have our Bumblebee Penstemon, and this is, one of my neighbors on the mountain who's a great gardener. They said, oh, our squash is not pollinated. So I gave them one of these that I dug up from my yard. And you can see those lines are there to guide the bees into the flower, which I just find amazing. And it'll grow in sun or shade. And then solanum. So the bees love this one. Again, blue is for bees and ladybugs. And then hummingbirds are pollinators too. So manzanitas are among the first things for hummingbirds. So if you don't have manzanitas, you're not helping the hummingbirds when in early spring or down the hill in December when nothing else is blooming. And the easiest one to get for us, even though there are other ones that grow up here, is the big berry manzanita. And those two pictures are from Tree of Life, which is a great place to get quality plants. And so these are native bee pollinated and hummingbird pollinated, and sometimes non-native bees will rob them by drilling a hole in the side of them because they can't fit in. Then of course our columbine, it has a dual thing. It has this red for the hummingbirds and this deep nectary, but it has yellow saying, hey bees, I have some pollen for you too. Then coral bells, I've watched hummingbirds go over, each and every flower of a coral bell. I mean, right next to me, really, like less than 6 feet away, and just working each and every flower. And I would not have believed that they would get that close to the ground, but they do. And then our Rabbit-Eared Penstemon on a rainy day at the demonstration garden. Again, beautiful hummingbird. And then here we have Penstemon, Centranthifolius, and Bumblebee Penstemon right next to each other in a wild location. And here we have our ribes. Again, the ribes are among the first with the manzanitas on what hummingbirds, what feeds hummingbirds and other pollinators at the very beginning of spring. So remember, pollinators need continuous bloom from that early slide. So we need plants that are early and late, and not just our summer plants. Then speaking of late plants, this is blooming right now. This is the local variety of the California Fuchsia, which is a hummingbird magnet for sure. And then, so, we talked about the daisy-like plants and the buckwheat plants, and then a little foray into the mint family. And so coyote mint, my favorite plant, if you know, my email is coyotemint. If you ever need to find me. And this is a summer bloomer, and I've seen both butterflies and bees and hummingbirds on it. And it's fragrant, and you can make tea out of it. I wouldn't have thought that this would grow in Big Bear, but there is a record. It's an early record, but it's definitely from Big Bear Valley. So Las Politas sells this version, and I'm gonna try it and see how it does at elevation. It's from the town of Alpine in San Diego County. Then the star of our show, the rose sage. If you could just get one native plant for Big Bear, this one punches all the buttons. You could eat the foliage, everything comes to it. It kind of does need to be in the sun to be happy, but it will tolerate light shade from pine trees. So a lot of these are from Jim Otterstrom, and just stunning pictures. Hummingbirds, butterflies coming to them, and more butterflies coming to them. And then, a reminder, if you see butterflies, you have caterpillars. So then a couple of pictures as a reminder that rice grass or blue grama grass is also a host for some moths and some butterflies. So don't forget a few native grasses. Non-native grasses are not helpful, but native grasses are. And this one was eaten by Indians. That's why it's called Indian rice grass, and those kernels are pretty big. And then, so we have food for our critters, but we also need water. And water is the most essential element of life. And so pollinators don't drink coffee. but they have to have water. And, so butterfly, here's a butterfly puddling. So butterflies go to damp areas. And although this looks kind of mulched, I think it is a picture in nature from Mickey Long. And so butterfly, the male butterflies need some bare ground that's wet with some minerals. And sometimes people just make a saucer with and there are recipes on the web that could be like a quarter teaspoon of salt to a quart of water, and they put some sand in a saucer and bring the butterflies that way. And sometimes you have to put a little picture of a butterfly, or cut out a picture of a butterfly, or the butterflies won't come. So people cut out a picture of butterflies and put it on a stick next to their puddle. But any water source is better than no water at all. And so my friend puts out a dish for water for the bees. And when she comes to refill the dish, the bees all leave. And then when this is just a little storage dish from the store with some rocks, because you don't want to drown your bees. And people who have pools are always sad about this. So don't be like that. Put some rocks. And that also helps the birds that have short feet, like our little tiniest goldfinches, their legs cannot be even a half an inch long. So if you're putting out water for birds, it needs to be shallow. And it can be a fancy fountain. Here is another fancy fountain, but when I talked to the person who designed this, we designed it together so that there's not a huge rush of water over here. And this is, only a quarter inch of water so that the goldfinches could come there. And they came immediately. And so, and a few pictures of other plants. And then I am gonna take questions if there are questions. And I'll stop the share. So.
All right, so I don't see anything in the Q&A box.
Okay.
And nothing in the chat box as of right now either. But does anyone have any questions? You can raise your hand, you can type in the chat box. And if you prefer to speak, let me know, I can allow you to talk.
Okay, well, I'm starting to think that I'm doing much better on the being comprehensive. And
all right.
Okay.
Well, on that note, maybe something.
Oh, look, there's our sunflowers native, which ones? Yes. So sunflowers are native. And sunflowers are among the best plants as an all-purpose bird and butterfly plant. So just the straight sunflower, the Helianthus annuus. There's also is a shrubby sunflower, Helianthus gracilis, but Helianthus annuus. Don't get the big, Russian mammoth sunflowers. Try to get your seed from Theodore Payne. I mean, you could get the big Russian mammoth and put them in your vegetable garden along with a few pollinator plants to bring the pollinators. But I would get my seed from the Theodore Payne Foundation or another native plant location and plant those. Sunflowers do have substances that inhibit other things from growing in their shells. So if you wonder why nothing grows around your bird feeder, that's why. But that means you just want to pick a little patch for your sunflowers. But I would say, that's one of the easiest things to grow. They're easy to germinate in like a paper towel if things are eating your plants in the garden and get them going. And so yes, good question. And I should have put that in. Sunflowers are a great all-purpose wildlife plant. And then thank you, Lisa. I'm trying to be comprehensive. And then potted natives. So you can get natives at, some natives are available at Emmingers and some are available at Hunters. And then there's a couple nurseries in Lake Arrowhead area, that the Four Seasons Nursery and the Rim Forest, maybe it's called Village Nursery.
Also, I'm going to interrupt you too. We also have Hood Growers in Big Bear City. He's been doing a really good job with the native plant rebate program and making sure that he's well stocked with natives. He's a great source as well here if you want to be in Big Bear.
So maybe you could put that one in the chat for people, because I haven't heard of them and I would like to see that name. And then, so altitude is not an issue for plants brought from down the hill. You can, as long as it's a species that grows in Big Bear or that grows on the mountain, you can bring any species from down the mountain that grows on the mountain from anywhere they grow it and plant it. And it will be fine. And we're getting into planting season, and I would wait to October, because these days we have so many Santa Ana winds, and the Santa Ana winds can just suck the life out of your plant. Well, it sucks the water right out of your plant. And when it doesn't have enough roots to put that water back into itself, they become very stressed. So October is a great time to plant native, and all the native plant sales down the hill are happening. The Heaps Peak Arboretum sale has been canceled, but they're going to try to have it in October. And I think that's fine, because the forest is closed. And but also planting in September is really tricky because of the whole Santa Ana wind thing and trying to keep the plants hydrated. And it's really easier to plant in October, water them really deeply, and then you could almost walk away until spring and come back and your plants pop up out of the ground and you're like, how did that happen? So it's kind of a magic trick. And so, but that gives you time to plan and maybe take a little field trip to Tree of Life. And some of these plants are available from Las Politas online. And Las Politas, their plants don't come in looking the best, but I will say they often perform the best. And they don't come in looking their best because they only use mycorrhiza. They do not fertilize. So, so that means on the day your plant comes, you have to plant it like tomorrow. Do not let it hang out. Other people's plants can hang out for a couple of weeks in a shady location. But if you got plants from Las Politas, try to order them for a day that you can be there and put them in the ground. Annie's annuals, they're kind of, native is not their main thing, but they do have some species that, aren't commonly available. So, or maybe might not be available to us. And then also High Country Gardens has some plants that, that can work for us.
And then I know that when we're taking care of the demonstration garden, when things begin to seed, we will also give away those seeds. So make sure to follow us on Facebook. We usually post that. Stop on by and we'll be happy to give you some for free.
Free locally adapted seed. Yay. It looks like I'm not seeing any other questions. Okay.
With that, if any other questions come up after class, feel free to email me at conservation@bblbwp.com, and I'll make sure to get the answers you need. I'll probably try and catch Orchid when she's not busy, if she can answer a question I don't know. And then also a reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure to register for the last 2 classes of our summer series. And thank you so much for participating so far. Next week will be Douglas Kent presenting on managing wildlife vegetation. So I think that's fairly relevant in the light of times right now for forest closures. And so I hope to see you next week, but definitely thank you for coming in today. And also you can check out our YouTube if you missed any of Orchid's first 2 presentations. Really appreciate Orchid for participating in the summer series and all the knowledge. It was a joy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And everyone else, stay safe and stay well.